everyone. It's good to see you all. In our last exploration, we delved into the world of Fahrenheit. And in this session, we're going to look at its younger brother Celsius. So, let's get started.
In the United States, Fahrenheit is so common that when the weather announcer on the TV or radio gives the temperature, they do not even say Fahrenheit or Celsius. Everyone knows they mean Fahrenheit. Most people in the United States never encounter Celsius and might consider it a foreign language if they did. 70 degrees Fahrenheit is comfortable, but saying it is 21 degrees Celsius outside sounds chilly.
So, I know that the US, does not use Celsius. But are there any other countries that don't?
Despite our casual use of Fahrenheit in the United States, we are outliers. The majority of the world uses Celsius. By majority, I mean 98% of the countries and 95% of the world population. Only 3 countries officially use Fahrenheit: the United States, Liberia, a small country on the coast of West Africa, and Myanmar. Myanmar is in Southeast Asia. Formerly known as Burma, it was a British colony for 124 years and used imperial measurements like mile, pound, and Fahrenheit, as did all British colonies. After gaining its freedom, Myanmar used a combination of imperial, metric, and local measurements. But recently, it has declared that it will join the majority of the world and adopt the metric system, including Celsius. Liberia was settled by freeborn and freed slaves from America in the 1800s, and that is why it uses the same system as the United States. However, it has also unofficially begun switching to the metric system. There may come a day when the United States is the only country using Fahrenheit.
With all these people switching over to Celsius and us maybe being the only people still using Fahrenheit, why is Celsius so popular? I mean, you mentioned in the previous podcast that Fahrenheit wasn't worse than Celsius. So, what's the difference? And why do we need 2 systems?
It's a good question. Fahrenheit is not worse than Celsius. Everyone remember that. We don't need 2 systems, though.
Wait, don't we have 3 systems?
Well, yes, but one is only used for science and the universe. It's not used for every day.
So we only have 2 everyday systems, and 1 system that's only for fancy pants people.
Is that what you call scientists, fancy pants people?
They learn so much more math, blessed be to them, than I do. Absolutely can't do it.
Okay, so people who learn math are fancy pants, and then there's Maddy.
I've decided if you have to learn a lot of equations and all that fun stuff and you have to memorize it, you become fancy pants. So doctors are fancy pantses. Really good construction workers are fancy pants, especially if they do like electrical wiring. I would try that and I'd go zzz.
You and me both.
See, anyone that does really complicated work is a fancy pants, which basically means almost all of us are in some ways fancy pantses.
All right. It appears that one scale is disappearing and another is thriving, but the temperature scale we call Celsius has succeeded where over a dozen others have not. And the scale we are going to talk about today was not the one Celsius developed, but he did make major contributions to it.
Wait, we named it Celsius, so what do you mean he didn't develop it?
The scale that we call Celsius is not the scale that Celsius used.
Explain?
Here we go. Anders Celsius was born in 1701 in Uppsala, Sweden, and lived there for his entire life. Not much is known about Anders' childhood or his personal adult life. His father and grandfather were both well-known astronomers and professors in Sweden, and Anders followed in their footsteps. He studied astronomy at Uppsala University and, like his father, became a professor there in 1730. He never married and had no children. Before learning about Anders Celsius, I had never heard of Uppsala, Sweden, but I should have. So much of scientific history seems to focus on scientists from England, Germany, France, and Italy. However, Sweden, especially the University of Uppsala, has been home to many well-known scientists, including Carl Linnaeus, more on him later, and several Nobel laureates in chemistry. Anders spent 3 years traveling Europe and visiting well-established observatories in Germany, Italy, and France before returning to Sweden and establishing Sweden's first modern observatory at his university.
You said astronomer. What does that have to do with temperature and or thermometers?
It's a very good question. I told you he didn't create the scale that uses his name, but he did figure something that is important to the accurate measure of temperature. As was common at the time, Anders was both an astronomer and a physicist. His grandfather had been both an astronomer and a mathematician. Anders' dual interests would help him solve a problem with thermometers. If you have ever lived at a high elevation, you know that it takes longer to cook mac and cheese. The instructions on the box will tell you how much longer to cook the noodles. The reason for this is the higher you go, the lower the boiling point of water becomes. At sea level, water boils at 212 degrees Fahrenheit. At 5,000 feet, it boils at 203 degrees Fahrenheit, and at 10,000 feet, it drops to 194 degrees Fahrenheit. To an untrained cook in Denver, it would appear that the water was boiling, so the noodles should be done. But because the actual temperature of the water is lower, it takes longer. This change in temperature may be a problem if you want a delicious meal, but it is a bigger problem if you are calibrating thermometers. Imagine if I had a glass-blowing factory in the 1700s in some town with an elevation of 2,000 feet. If I used the Fahrenheit scale and set the boiling point of water at 212 degrees on my thermometer, and someone took it to another town with a higher or lower altitude, the temperature would be incorrect. In exploring the world, as many scientists were doing, it was difficult to get an accurate temperature reading. This became Anders' greatest contribution to thermometry, but not what he is known for.
Right. He's known for the temperature scale that everyone uses. But you said that that's not entirely true.
What if I told you he wasn't the first to use the freezing and boiling points of water as fixed measurements, and his thermometer had 0 as the boiling point and 100 as the freezing point?
I heard the reason that his at least was upside down was because they were in Sweden, and Sweden got so cold that it made more sense for them to have the colder number going up so that they didn't have to get into negatives.
Give Maddy a gold star. You are absolutely right. They did it that way so they didn't have to deal with negative numbers. Anders published more than 20 scientific articles on various subjects, one of which examined the impact of the aurora borealis on compass needles. But his most famous paper is called Observations on 2 Persistence Degrees on a Thermometer. Before creating his own temperature scale, he used the Fahrenheit scale as many scientists of the time did. However, for his studies of the freezing and boiling point of water, he created a scale that set 100 at freezing and 0 at boiling. From there, he figured out what is known as the Celsius rule about altitude. This refers to how temperature drops as elevation increases. In general, air temperature drops 6 to 10 degrees Celsius for every 1,000 meters you climb, and the boiling point of water drops 1 degree Celsius for every 300 meters of elevation gain. That's the same as 1 degree Fahrenheit for every 500 feet gain. This meant that thermometers could now be used accurately around the world and compared with other measurements. In the same way that Daniel Fahrenheit's invention of the mercury thermometer was a big step forward, Anders Celsius's rule of altitude improved the accuracy of science.
Now that's not great to learn about dead men, because really, you learn from history and all that jazz. But if he didn't create the actual Celsius measuring system, who did, and how did it take off and become such a big craze? Like, woohoo, Celsius!
Your patience has been rewarded.
Give me a cookie then!
How about answers? You like answers instead?
Cookies!
Anders might have fixed his thermometer himself, as there were many scales in existence that went from 0 to 100 instead of 100 to 0, but he died at the age of 40 from tuberculosis just a few years after he developed his scale. Many people may have had a hand in reversing Anders' scale, but the one who gets credited the most is Carl Linnaeus. I told you we'd be talking about him again. Carl Linnaeus was a well-known professor of botany at Uppsala University at the same time that Anders taught there. Have you heard of Carl Linnaeus, Maddy?
No, but I feel like that's an unfair question. I don't do names. I do faces.
Oh, well, I don't know what his face looked like.
Neither do I.
Okay, among other achievements, he is known as the father of modern taxonomy. Humans are Homo sapien. You've heard of that before?
Yes.
Carl Linnaeus invented a two-part Latin naming system for all living things that is still used today.
And yes, I do know of him. Yay.
He also developed the classification system that many students must memorize: kingdom, class, order, genus, species. There have been changes made to his systems over the years, but much of what Linnaeus developed remained the same. Now, about the thermometer. There were many scales in use at the time that Anders developed his. However, with the use of his rule of altitude, Anders' scale was very accurate. It is said that Carl Linnaeus proposed reversing the numbers so it would be similar to other scales, including Fahrenheit. This scale, not known as the Celsius scale, but as the centigrade scale, centigrade means 100 steps, gained in popularity as Europe adopted a metric scale for all measurements. The history of how the world became metric is fascinating, and if you want to learn more, I recommend the book Whatever Happened to the Metric System: How America Kept Its Feet by John Marciano. One of the most influential events in the adoption of the metric system was the French Revolution.
Viva la freedom!
The French Revolution, also known as the Reign of Terror, resulted in 14,000 to 17,000 deaths, many by execution by guillotine.
Man, they like the sharp knives.
Ugh, I don't even like thinking about it.
And you get a knife, and you get a knife, and you get a knife, and a head.
Yeah, they all got a head.
Hey, it's still better than poisoning.
Maybe faster.
You don't feel it once it goes through. I mean, you don't feel it. Poisoning, you have to deliberately drink something, be forced to drink something, then spend a couple hours going, dang it.
I know, I'm just imagining the anticipation of the knife, and I don't want thoughts like that in my head.
You have thoughts like that in your head anyways.
Not of guillotines. I try to stay away from guillotine thoughts. It just gives me the shivers.
Well, popular choice back then.
Yes, 14,000 to 17,000 people died that way. It was a bloody way to establish a new republic, and it told the world that France was not going to live by old rules and old rulers.
And old systems.
And old systems. Here we go. The new republic changed the systems of measurement, time, and temperature to the metric system and insisted that the people of France use only this system. It was considered scientific advancement in contrast to the old ways of following the whim of the current king. So feet became meters, pounds became kilograms, and whatever temperature was in use, remember there may have been many, became the centigrade.
Centigrade. Wait. You just said it wasn't even called Celsius originally?
Nope.
Okay, explain where the heck Celsius ended up coming from then. Because we've already established he's made remarkable feats in temperature itself. But if they didn't name it that originally, how the heck did they get to the name then? Did they pull a name out of a hat?
Oh, I don't want to give it away, but Maddy, you're very close. Many ideas of the new republic, such as a 10-day week, did not survive, but the basic metric system did. The new republic did not live long either, and a new dictator came to power. You have probably heard of him. Napoleon Bonaparte was Emperor of France from 1804 to 1814. In that time, he had some success in conquering Europe until his final defeat at Waterloo. What you may not have known about Napoleon was that he was very interested in science and spent time with many notable scientists. He also funded scientific exploration, which sometimes had a military tie-in, and he spread the metric system across every country he conquered. In this way, the metric system spread rapidly throughout the world. The one exception was Great Britain, Napoleon's archenemy. England did not convert to the metric system, and thus all of their colonies did not switch either. However, as British colonies gained their freedom, they often switched from the imperial system to the metric system.
Wait, did Britain end up switching over?
Yes, they did. As we know, because they're not on that list of 3 countries that use Fahrenheit. Alright, are you ready to learn why we call it Celsius?
That would be a nice turn of events, yes.
There was a problem using the term centigrade for a temperature scale. In many countries, centigrade had another meaning already. It is 1/100th of a grade, or 1/100th of a right angle. In this case, it is literally 100 steps. So in 1948, the 9th General Conference on Weights and Measures changed the name. Since other temperature scales were named for scientists, they decided to do the same and chose Celsius.
But how?
There was a book written by a German scientist who said Celsius created this thermometer, and they said, oh, if he created it, he should get named for it.
Well, fair enough.
So now you know the history of the Celsius scale. Here is the interesting thing. It is not truly metric. Celsius officially joined the International System of Units, SI, at the same time that it got its new name. However, it is not a base SI unit. That's Kelvin. I'm not going to give anything else away about Kelvin. All I'll say here is that Kelvin and Celsius play well together because they have the same scale. To go from Celsius or Kelvin and back, all you have to do is add or subtract 273.15. The lines on the scale are the same distance apart. However, if you want to convert Celsius to Fahrenheit, you hopefully have an app on your phone. There is an equation, but no one uses it because you can just ask Google.
You make it sound like this is an evil equation.
It's an evil equation.
I now wish to know what this evil equation is.
All right, but don't say I didn't warn you. Fahrenheit equals Celsius multiplied by 1.8 plus 32.
We were correct. It is, in fact, an evil equation.
So will the United States ever switch to a fully metric system? I can't tell the future, but I can say we have no need to. Our world is full of imperial and metric measurements, and we don't even blink. Gas is measured in gallons, but you buy a 2-liter bottle of soda. A mile is 4 laps around the track, but common race distances are the 5K and the 10K. You probably have fraction of an inch and millimeter tools, depending on what you are working on. Even our money is a combination of decimal and fraction. Nickels and dimes are 0.05 and 0.1 cents of a dollar, but a quarter is a quarter of a dollar. No one questions it. It's just the way it's always been, and because we are used to it, we don't even blink. But tell us we have to change and we'll be up in arms. I don't know if we'll ever change from Fahrenheit, but it may be so gradual we don't even notice until it is over and done.
Well, that was more than I thought I'd know about a man named Celsius for a while, and the fact that Celsius was not originally called Celsius. But hey, something new is always something new. I can wow the family at dinners the next time I see them. We hope you guys enjoyed this session, and we hope for you guys to join us in future ones too. If you're up for it, please feel free to hit the like and subscribe button, or join in with us. Wednesdays on the podcast site, and Sundays on our YouTube channel. Have a good rest of the day, you guys. Bye-bye.